In this video, we'll be discussing adding the vendors to the vendor master file. Like all other master file screens in Aria, they are located under the master data link, and I'm double clicking on the vendor icon here to open the screen. Like always, we advise our customers to find a pattern for the vendor number or the vendor ID. This will help actually when running reports by vendor range, or also will help when trying to locate a vendor in a big or a large vendor master list. For now, I am going to use this generic code VIM-E01, and I'm pressing enter on my keyboard. It says vendor is not found. That's what you like to do. I'm clicking on add. Then we start adding the general information for the supplier in this area, which includes his company name, address, phone numbers, contacts, credit limits, and things of that sort. So this is actually a nice feature in Aria. If you are adding another vendor with the same name, Aria gives you a warning message to let you know that the vendor might be in the system already. Be careful. Let's say that the t-shirt division is the division that's responsible for buying from this guy, but you're not going to be limited, of course, to buying from that division or products that are linked to that division. The main contact of the vendor is going to show up over here, and of course you can click on that small button as you saw. I'm clicking on new here to start entering the vendors. For example, and you will have the ability to put, of course, job title, business phone numbers, salutations, emails, addresses if that contact is actually at a different location, and so on. As I said, you can add as many contacts as you like, but one of them must be named and tagged as the default contact in order for it to show up on the main screen. Next. And you have the ability here to enter short comments, your account number at the vendor site, and the buying agent. We have 3 fields to help us further classify the vendor. Like this vendor, for example, is a blank t-shirt supplier, so I'm just gonna call him blank T as the type, and the classification, he's an import vendor. The t-shirts are imports maybe, and the name of the the buyer from within my company that's actually buying from that supplier. Now, if you have a credit limit at the supplier side, you will be putting it in here, and Aria will maintain the credit available for you. This is actually a very important part in the setup. So it just simply classifies what kind of service or products I'm getting from that supplier. So I'm gonna have to always open this whenever I create a new supplier. You just simply need to check that box, and you're gonna get that small screen that we have open. So if we think about it, vendors or suppliers are either gonna be supplying us with finished goods, raw materials, contractor services on cutting ticket or purchase orders, like cutting, sewing, finishing, marking, anything of that sort, and miscellaneous services like the landlord, phone company, those kind of services that are non-production related. The purpose of actually doing this is to actually kind of know where to show that vendor. So if we choose styles, for example, here, this means that this guy supplies us with finished goods. So this vendor will start showing up on all transactions screens that are related to buying imported products. If raw material is selected, meaning that this vendor should be showing only on the transactions that are related to buying raw materials, and so on. And if the vendor actually supplies you with 2 different types or 3 or 4 different types, you can always choose as many as you want. As you can see, the lower part of the screen is divided into multiple tabs. The first one is related to the accounts that we should be hitting at the time when we create an accounts payable bill for this supplier, which is an advanced setup that we will discuss at the time when we discuss the general ledger and the accounts payable and the relation between both. And this is also kind of related to the same subject, general ledger. This is how we know how do we pay that supplier, whether by wire transfers or printed checks or this or that, and we will discuss this in details also when we start talking about the accounts payable. So I'm going to skip it right now, and I'm going to say that we usually pay him with the 30. Taxes and factor are also related to the accounts payable. Here we'll be able to put the tax ID for this supplier, okay, and with some setups we should be able to select the 1099 forms for taxation purposes. Factor is in case if he's a factor vendor and we need to pay him through a specific factor. Summary is just simply an information tab which will show you the last purchase you bought from this supplier, what was the value of that purchase, what was the last receivings you received, value, and so on, last payment number or last check printed for him, current balance of bills, and so on. Then this is it for adding the simple vendor, or the setup for a vendor that's not related to the accounts payable and the general ledger, and we will be revisiting this screen later. And of course, after adding all the information, we always click on save to save the information that we entered, and we usually get the standard notes message.